Okay, so today's tomato review is going to be on the TLACOLULA tomato. Let's take a closer look at this tomato, and I believe it's pronounced TLACOLULA tomato or TLACOLULA tomato. I'm not exactly sure how it's said correctly. I think it's Spanish. I'm not really sure. Now these are the only tomatoes I got this year off it, but I have grown these tomatoes in the past, and they form this wonderful pear shape type of a tomato, like a giant fat teardrop that gets these wrinkles in it all the way down the tomato. It's really cool looking tomato. Very interesting shape to it. Very different from most of the other tomatoes that you grow. So here's a look at the tomato, and we will zoom you out. Now this one didn't totally form the way they normally form because I only got a few tomatoes off of this plant this year, so I couldn't really get enough of a good example of that shape. But this is a good example of what it will look like. These convolutions and wrinkles are very prominent in this tomato. You can really see these wrinkles in there. Really awesome looking shape. It's got a nice pink color to it when it ripens, but when it's on the vine normally and it's just kind of sitting there, it's got like a nice orange color to it. But once you let it ripen, it really does get pinkish like this predominantly. So here's a look at the inside of the small one anyway. This is a small one. I'll cut this open too for you. I'm going to save seeds anyway, so. Now, you can see what it looks like. A very interesting shape on the inside of this. The seed chambers are very different looking. And they're kind of all over the place. Now, this is all not attached to the rind, so I'm assuming this is going to be a dry tomato. Could be wrong. There is wilding in here, but not very prominently. So I don't know if it's just this tomato or what the deal is, but this is not a commercial grade tomato as far as I know. It's kind of a rare tomato from Mexico, and it's not a very common tomato. It's only really found in Mexico, other than the seeds that you would buy online. Basically, that's really the only place this tomato is. It just comes from a very small part of Mexico. And yeah, there is wilding in here, like around the edges around there and whatnot. And it's just a gorgeous looking tomato all the way around. I love that pink convoluted shape on that. I guess you would almost call this an ugly tomato, but it's not really considered an ugly tomato because of that pear shape on it. So that does kind of separate it from like all the other tomatoes. I can't really think of what else would even come close to the shape that this thing gets. Maybe the Japanese Trifele tomato, even though it doesn't get the convolutions, it does get that teardrop shape to it, which is what this gets. But it, like I say, it's not really. Maybe the Kazuti tomato, or Gazette tomato. That's another one that gets like that shape, that teardrop shape to it. But they're not very common. And this particular one is not from Italy or Europe. This one is definitely native to, I believe it's central Mexico. I'm not 100% sure. But let's see, what else about this? Yeah, the seeds, you can see the way the seeds are. They're kind of just different pattern shape on that thing. And that's what it looks like even inside the regular shaped ones, like with the pear shape on it. They still look kind of like that pattern. Even though this kind of formed like a beefsteak or an ugly tomato or something like that, it still forms that same pattern on the inside of the pear shapes of the tomato. So let's give it a bite and give it a taste test. Let's go over the texture first. This particular tomato, it's kind of dry and chalky like I suspected, and that's only because the tomato plant was dying pretty much before it could even finish ripening this tomato. And so that might have a lot to do with it. So right now, it's kind of a chalky tomato for me. And it's also creamy, too, at the same time. It's very thick and creamy. There's not much seeds in it, so I'm not getting that crazy type of tang flavor, but for the little bit of seeds that are there, it is very tangy. So let me take another bite and then try to describe that tangy flavor. Okay, so the tang is probably running around 35 in the tang. Sweetness is probably somewhere around 20, 25. It's not very sweet, but it does have enough sweetness to at least balance it pretty good. It's not perfectly balanced, but it's pretty good. It's more tangy than sweet. The tangy part is a nice, smooth, non-mouth puckering type of tangy. Not like a lemon. It's not going to make you pucker up. It's a nice, smooth tomato tang flavor, and it hits that back region of your tongue. It's just nice. It's perfect, that part. Sweetness is a little low. Probably could develop a little more sweetness. Maybe I'll grow these next year. We'll get a little bit more sweetness out of it. It'll grow a little bit better. But nothing to brag about right now. As far as in between it, there's really not much moisture. It's not crazy moisture, but it's moist enough, but it's kind of chalky and it's kind of creamy at the same time. So that could just be an environmental issue this year that caused that effect. But the, what else? The skins on it aren't really tough, but every now and again you do get a little piece that's stuck in your mouth. And when the skins get stuck to the roof of your mouth, that's really annoying because you don't really feel it there. But when you start talking and everything, that little piece of skin may fly out of your mouth. So it's that kind of a thing. So it's a little bit here and there, but you don't really notice it. It's very thin. It broke up nice. It chewed it really well. I can't really say too much about what you would use it for other than salads, salsa, things like that. I don't know about making sauce with it. I'd have to develop this tomato and grow it for several years and get some really good examples of it and then try to make sauce with that and see how that comes out. I'm sure it'll make a pretty good sauce, but I can't really say because I don't really know. I've never made sauce with it. I've been growing this tomato for 3 years. The first year did okay. I did okay with it. I got a bunch of tomatoes off it. They seemed okay at that time. Second year, I didn't do that good with it last year, and this year I did even worse. It wasn't because the tomato is a faulty tomato. It's just this tomato might require just more hot and tropical environment to really thrive. Up here, it's kind of hit and miss. You really get hot days, and then it's cold. It's too sporadic, and I think that really affected the tomato. Plus, the soil wasn't right, and I also got hit with all kinds of diseases as well. Several different diseases took my tomato plants out this year. So I just haven't had any luck up in this part of the country growing tomatoes in general. And unfortunately, this is one of the tomatoes that didn't do as good. I got probably about 6 tomatoes off that plant altogether. These are the last 2 that I have left, so I figured I'd do a review on it rather than just cut them open, save seeds, and eat them and stuff. So I figured I'd share that with you. But this tomato is definitely worth looking into and growing and trying to adapt to your environment. If you're looking for something a little bit different than your regular beefsteak tomatoes or slice of tomatoes, you want something a little different, this tomato is definitely worth looking into because it definitely has a different look to it and presentation and everything. So just for that alone, I would grow the tomato. But that's really it. That's all I can really say about this tomato. I'll take one more bite. It's really not bad tasting, to tell you the truth. The tang is kind of high in relation to the sweetness. The tang is a little bit high. It hits the back of your tongue really strong. But it's nice. It's a real nice effect. It's got a real nice, even acidic flavor to it. It's not really overwhelming or anything like that. And there's just enough sweetness to just about offset it, but it could use a little more sweetness. But it's really not a bad tomato at all. I wouldn't mind putting salt on that and eating that up just the way it is with the salt on it and everything. But I'll have to grow this tomato out for a few years, really see what it could do and see what its full potential is. That means that's going to require me making special soil, trying to grow it in an area of my yard that is not going to be affected by blight and other diseases. So I'm really going to have to put attention to it. I don't know if I will be doing it this year. I may do it in future videos only because I'm selling my house and I really don't have time to waste, going through all this extra trouble. I would rather just sell a house, buy a new piece of land, clear out the land, get it all fertilized or so, and start all over again and just start with new fresh tomato and really see what we can do with tomatoes that are grown in large abundance. And instead of me growing 1 or 2 plants, I'll grow an entire row of these tomatoes, you know, maybe 30 plants in a row. And I'll grow, you know, I'll have 1/2 acre of land specifically dedicated to tomatoes. So I can grow a row of these, grow a row of those, grow a row of them, you know, just we'll have all different kinds of tomatoes growing, and we can really see what the potential is of that plant. Kind of hard for me to do in this environment, being our weather is really, it's not a tomato friendly environment up here. This is high in elevation. It's also the weather and temperature and everything else is just very sporadic. So tomatoes like this really don't want to do very well up here. So I really got to go out of my way to try to get these tomatoes to produce. But as far as this tomato goes, rating wise, I'm going to rate it as a number 3 this year. I'm not totally happy with it. That hollowing in around the rind. Now, I didn't notice it last year. I did notice it on a couple tomatoes. And the reason why I point this out, yeah, that could be an environmental condition that causes the hollowing effect, but that could also be caused by the genetics of the tomato as well. So I do point that out for that reason. You might be seeing hollowing. You grow that year in and year out, you'll always see that hollowing. That's the same thing with blossom end rot. Certain tomatoes are extremely prone to getting blossom end rot. No matter what you grow it in or what condition you do, the tomato variety always seems to get blossom end rot, like the Marzano tomato. It's always getting blossom end rot. It's been a big complaint from many tomato growers. So this could be one of those tomatoes that give you these hollow spots in the chambers. Again, I don't remember what the previous tomatoes were. A lot of times when I'm eating tomatoes in the field, I just kind of eat them. I don't slice them open with a knife and check everything. I just kind of bite into it. So I don't really know if it's always been hollow. But if I keep doing reviews on it and I keep seeing this hollow thing, then that's going to mean that this is probably more on a hollow tomato side rather than a solid tomato. And that's not a big deal. It's just you got to be aware of what you're growing. You know, you're growing hollow tomatoes, you're growing solid tomatoes. What are we doing here? So, but I can't rate this past a 3 this year. I'm not terribly impressed with the flavor so far. It's kind of mundane for me at this point, having done so many tomato reviews, which you probably won't see until next year because I'm trying to upload a tomato review every other day or every couple days, and it's and along with my pepper reviews, it's just several hundred videos I got to upload, and it's very overwhelming. So I can't, I have to get through these tomato reviews. But yeah, it's a number 3. I will be working on this tomato a little more in the future. I'm definitely going to put it on my top list as far as making sure I give it the attention it needs to try to get some fruit out of it. There were several tomato plants this year that just didn't really perform well, and they didn't perform well last year, and they didn't perform well the year before. Now I'm to the point where I've got almost no more seeds, and I really got to focus on what's going on here and try to get that variety to take. So some of them are hitting that list. This is probably going to be one of them because I really don't have many seeds from this. So, but that's it. That's your tomato review for the Douchoua tomato. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care.